I think I'm beginning to see that there's this fear of, there's like a barrier there of kind of like this, and it seems like trust is necessary to let go. I guess it's the letting go. Something has to be willing, I guess, because the idea that there's no objects, it seems like it might be boring. But that the mind is coming up with that, and then so it's like going beyond the mind, and then what is there? It's sort of jumping off the cliff. And I guess it's really the love of and trust in the guru's words that get you there, I guess. Because otherwise
that's it.
The mind won't get you there, because the mind wants to be in control. And it's going to tell you, oh, that's, that'd be boring, or that's what my mind says.
Yeah. And everyone's mind will have something similar to that. It'll be boring, it'll be dull, it'll be scary, it'll be nothing, it'll be a void, it'll be empty. That's not what I'm looking for. This is what the mind will say. And that's why these teachings are not very popular, because if you have a choice between Turiya or a Ferrari, or Turiya and a nice slice of cake, or Turiya or a night out in the town with your friends, most people are not going to pick Turiya, right?
Right.
Because and even most of you will not pick Turiya.
We're not ready. I think there's a certain what do you call it, exhaustion, maybe, that of all the alternatives, or of looking, even though I know intellectually that it isn't in the objects of Maya, there's kind of this I guess it has to be to the point where you just give up looking or seeking, and you just kind of fall into I don't know, yeah, the unknown, or the abyss, I guess. That's what it sort of feels like. But yet there's yeah, it does seem like you have to be really you really have to exhaust something, so some kind of energy or movement toward movement, where there's no movement in the Turiya state.
No, there's no movement. Movement means time and space and objects. That means the mind. Movement means Maya, the mind, the body. Mind here meaning Maya, meaning the body, mind, and world. Yeah, this, is a combination of those things, Kathleen. I love this because you're being very real here. You're being really real. Most people's minds will project onto what this state is like. And this is why you need the guru's teaching, because the guru says, yes, 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 I know your mind thinks that, but actually, this is what you are looking for. Your mind is telling you you're looking for something else, but no, this is what you're looking for. What you're looking for is yourself, your own innermost self. And he keeps on saying innermost self. Whereas the false teachings say, well, the self is everywhere and everything. Bhagavan says the self is everywhere and everything, but you cannot discover it outside. You can only discover it inside, which logically doesn't make sense. Because if the self is everywhere and everything, then why can't you discover it everywhere and in everything? But Bhagavan keeps on saying, no, you can only discover it within, meaning as the subject. Because otherwise you go towards objects and you perpetuate Maya. But this is a combination of things. One is exhaustion with looking for happiness in outward objective phenomena. That's one thing. Yeah. That by itself is not enough. Yeah. Because if that's all you have, you might end up committing suicide, killing the body, which is not what we want, just to be clear. The second thing is, one is disdain and weariness with objective phenomena as a means to happiness. Yeah. The second thing is love for self, love for Bhagavan, love for God, love to be with yourself. These two things go hand in hand. It's only because we suffer that we become interested in this path. When we initially start to suffer, the natural reaction is, well, let's look for another way to be happy in the world. And then when that one doesn't work, well, let's look for another way to be happy in the world. And then maybe that one does work for a while, or it does work partially, but then there's something else happens, so you keep on looking for solutions in the world. And eventually a part of us starts to look within. Maybe we come across Bhagavan's teachings, which are rare teachings, which are the highest teachings. Doesn't mean he has the monopoly on it, but it just means that his teachings are rare and they're the highest ones. There might be other teachings that are also the highest. Haven't come across them. I've come across them here and there, but Bhagavan's teachings are the ones that I come across that have everything you need. But then, so it's this dual thing. Then you fall in love with him and in love with yourself. This is why that text, Sri Guru Ramana Prasadam, is so wonderful. Because in that text, Muruganar talks about how he was a lowlife, how he was an ordinary person. He had all these failings as a man. And how, through Bhagavan's grace, through love of Bhagavan, he discovered who he was, what he was. It's very inspiring to realize that your own very self, which the mind conceives of as being a nothing, a void, because the mind only can think of objects. So if you say there are no objects, it's like, what? I don't want that. The mind can only conceive of happiness in objects. Even if it's subtle objects like feelings and transcendental experiences. These are all Maya. These are all illusion. These are all objects. But the mind can only think of happiness in that way. Whereas Bhagavan says, none of that is going to make you happy. You're sitting on a great treasure and you're looking for pennies outside. Turn within, discover the treasure. The mind says, what, no pennies? No pennies? I want the pennies. Because that's all it knows. When it sees diamonds and gold, it doesn't understand that that's treasure. That's like the self. The self is like the diamond, the gold, the real value, the real treasure. But the mind can only conceive of pennies and copper coins. So it gets scared. Doesn't want to give up what it knows. It thinks that is life. It thinks the waking state is life. There are a series of verses in Guru Vachakakaya where he talks about the foolish way the mind thinks that the waking state is life, whereas the true eternal life is actually in the self, in pure consciousness, devoid of objects, because this is the true eternal life. But the mind turns away from that and revels in what it thinks of as being life and thinks it is living life. Whereas this is actually death. The waking state, which we call consciousness and life, is actually death. And what we think of as being death, like deep sleep we think of as a nothing, boring, empty, black, dark, void. That is actually the treasure.
Yeah.
It's
It
great.
does seem like a lot of the teachings of are I mean, some teachings, I guess, are sort of wanting us to go toward happiness, but it seems like happiness isn't the real. Um, it seems like it's deeper than. I guess it's the definition of happiness that gets in the way in terms of we think of happiness relative to objects, and that's not what it is.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. This is why Bhagavan doesn't actually recommend going towards happiness. What does he say? He says, the only way, he says, in the text, Who Am I? He says, the only way to attain liberation is through inquiry, self-inquiry. The only way. He says, all other ways will lead to a temporary result, because all other ways pertain to objects, you see. Self-inquiry means go towards the subject, the I am. The I am is the only thing that is not an object. It's the subject. The subject is the only thing that doesn't change, doesn't come and go. So when we base our practice upon the subject, the result is that which is eternal, because the subject is that which is eternal. When we discover its true nature, we see it's eternal. It's not born, it doesn't die. All other ways, apart from self-inquiry, go towards objects, either gross objects or subtle objects. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, experiences. So they will only lead to temporary results. Essentially, these are my words now, if you go towards an object, you're going towards Maya, you end up with Maya. You end up with that which comes and goes. You go towards the subject, which is the actual eternal truth of yourself, you discover what you are. So in the text, Who Am I? If you read it carefully, he says the only way to destroy the mind, here by mind, he means the outgoing tendency towards objects, the ego, ignorance, Maya. To destroy Maya, to destroy the mind, the only way is to do self-inquiry. He says there's another way as well called self-surrender. But in Who Am I, he defines self-surrender. And if you read the way he defines it, he's describing self-inquiry. Have a read, you'll see. So actually, he doesn't say follow your happiness. He says, who am I? This is why the text is called, Who Am I? Discover what you truly are. That's the truth. And then you discover you are happiness. But it's not really the same as it is the same, but it's not based on objects. It's total happiness. Because there's no suffering, no possibility of suffering.